Daniel was 24 years old. He had a job in a small office, not very exciting, but it paid his bills. Every morning he promised himself that he would wake up early, exercise, read something useful, and work on his personal goals. But most mornings looked the same. He pressed the snooze button again and again. He scrolled on his phone for half an hour before getting up. He rushed through breakfast and left his apartment late. At work, Daniel was always a little tired. He drank too much coffee and told himself he would be more focused tomorrow. After work, he wanted to work on his dream project, writing stories for children, but he usually spent the evening watching TV or playing games. Deep inside, Daniel felt frustrated. He often asked himself, "Why can't I be more disciplined? Why do I always wait for motivation to start something? Why can't I be consistent?" One evening, after another wasted day, Daniel walked home slowly. He looked at people around him. Some looked busy, others relaxed, but many seemed more in control of their lives than he was. Daniel thought, maybe I'm just lazy. Maybe I'll never change. But then he remembered something his grandfather used to say. Discipline is stronger than motivation. Motivation is a mood, but discipline is a decision. These words stayed in Daniel's mind that night. He lay in bed, unable to sleep, thinking about them. Maybe the problem was not that he lacked motivation. Maybe the problem was that he depended on motivation too much. The next day, Daniel met his old friend, Sarah, at a cafe. She was very different from him. She woke up at 6 a.m. every day, went jogging, worked as a teacher, and still found time to paint. "You're always so consistent," Daniel said while stirring his coffee. "How do you do it? Don't you ever feel lazy?" Sarah laughed. "Of course I do. I don't always feel motivated, but I've learned not to wait for motivation. I use habits, routines, and systems." Daniel frowned. "Systems? Like what?" "Well," Sarah explained, "I prepare my running clothes before I go to bed. When I wake up, they're right there. It's harder to skip my jog when everything is ready. I also block my time. I decide ahead of time when I'll do things, and I protect those times like appointments." Daniel listened carefully. For the first time, he understood that discipline was not about being strong all the time. It was about designing your life so that good actions became automatic. The first small step. That evening, Daniel decided to try something simple. He placed a notebook on his desk and wrote, "New habit. No phone before bed. Instead, read 10 pages." He wanted to start small, like Sarah had suggested. He set an alarm on his phone to remind him at 10 p.m. Then he put his book next to his pillow. The first night, it worked. He read 10 pages before sleeping. The second night, it also worked. On the third night, he was very tired and wanted to skip it, but the book was waiting for him. He told himself, just 2 pages tonight. After 2 pages, he kept going and finished 8. Daniel smiled to himself. It was not perfect, but it was progress. Lesson learned. Within 1 week, Daniel noticed something strange. He was not magically more motivated, but he was a little more disciplined. He realized that starting small made habits easier. He didn't need to fight with himself so much. Sarah's words returned to him. Don't wait for motivation. Build systems. That night, Daniel opened his notebook again and wrote, "Discipline is built one small habit at a time." He didn't know it yet, but this was the first step of a long journey, a journey that would slowly change his life. The next morning, Daniel woke up earlier than usual. Not much earlier, just 15 minutes. He wanted to try something different. instead of rushing. He sat at his desk with a notebook where he had written his first habit. On the first page, he added a new line. Wake up 15 minutes earlier. Stretch for 5 minutes. It looked small, almost too small, but he remembered Sarah's advice. Start tiny. Tiny grows. The first week, the first few days were easy. Waking up 15 minutes earlier didn't feel painful. Stretching for 5 minutes was even nice. He played quiet music and felt his body wake up slowly. But on the fourth day, he went to bed very late. When the alarm rang, he wanted to stay under the blanket. His mind whispered, 5 minutes more, you can stretch later. Today doesn't matter. Daniel almost listened, but then he remembered another phrase Sarah had told him. Every choice is a vote for the person you want to become. If he stayed in bed, he was voting for laziness. If he got up, even just for 5 minutes, he was voting for discipline. So he got up. He didn't feel strong, but he did the stretch. And after he finished, he smiled. He had proven something important. Discipline was not about feeling good. It was about choosing even when you didn't feel like it. The compounding effect. One evening, Daniel and Sarah met again. I don't understand, Daniel said. How can these tiny habits really change me? 5 minutes of stretching, 10 pages of reading. It feels too small. Sarah nodded. That's normal. But think about money. When you save just one coin, it looks small. But if you save every day, it grows. That's called compound interest. Habits are the same. They compound. They grow into something powerful over time. She took a napkin and drew a line. At the start, it looked flat, but slowly, the line rose higher and higher. This is how small habits grow, she explained. At first, you don't see results. But after weeks and months, they change your life. Daniel stared at the napkin. Something clicked in his mind. He didn't need giant changes. He only needed small actions, repeated again and again, building a chain. Daniel decided to test this idea. He bought a big wall calendar and hung it in his room. Each day he completed his small habits, reading, stretching. He put a big red X on the date. Soon he had 3 X's in a row, then 5, then 10. The line of X's grew like a chain. One evening his friend called, "Let's go out tonight." Daniel looked at his calendar. If he skipped, the chain would break. He didn't want to break it. So he said, "I'll join you later after I finish my reading." For the first time, Daniel realized he cared about keeping promises to himself. The red X's were more than marks on paper. They were proof that he was becoming consistent. The habit stacking trick. A week later, Sarah shared another tool with him. Habit stacking. "You already brush your teeth every night, right?" she asked. "Of course," Daniel said. "Good. Then after brushing, add a small new habit. For example, write one sentence in your notebook. Because the old habit is strong, the new habit will attach to it." Daniel tried this. Every night after brushing his teeth, he opened his notebook and wrote one sentence about his day. At first it was simple. I read 10 pages, or I stretched. But after some days, he started writing more. His notebook slowly became a small journal, and journaling helped him notice his progress and mistakes. Lesson learned. After a month, Daniel looked back at his calendar and notebook. The difference was not huge, but it was real. He was reading more books than ever before. He felt healthier. He trusted himself a little more. He realized that the power of discipline was not in dramatic changes. It was in small habits done every day. One night, he wrote in his notebook, "Motivation is a spark. Habits are the fire. Daniel smiled as he closed a notebook. For the first time in years, he felt that change was truly possible. One Saturday morning, Daniel sat at his desk with his notebook open. He looked at the wall calendar full of red X's. It made him proud, but he also felt a little uneasy. I'm reading more, I'm stretching, but why do I still feel I have no time for my dream project? Daniel wanted to write stories for children. He had dreamed of this for years. But weeks kept passing, and he had not written a single page. That afternoon, he met Sarah in the park. Families were walking. Kids were playing. The sun was bright. I'm doing better with my habits, Daniel said, but I still don't have time for what really matters. My evenings just disappear. Sarah looked at him kindly. You don't find time, Daniel. You make time. Time is not lost in big blocks. It's lost in little leaks. Tracking the hours. Sarah gave him a challenge. Tomorrow, write down everything you do. From the moment you wake up until you go to bed. Track every hour. Daniel agreed. The next day, he carried his notebook everywhere. 7 o'clock. Check phone for 20 minutes. 7:30, breakfast. 8:15, watched random videos. 9 o'clock, laundry. 10 o'clock, grocery shopping. 11 o'clock, scrolled social media. At the end of the day, Daniel was shocked. Almost 3 hours were gone to his phone and random videos. Another hour disappeared into mindless scrolling. I thought I was busy, he admitted to himself. But really I was careless. Time blocking. The next evening, Daniel met Sarah again. He showed her the messy notes. Exactly, Sarah said. This is why discipline with time matters. You can't control every minute, but you can design your day. It's called time blocking. She took his notebook and drew rectangles like boxes in a calendar. Here, work from 9 to 5. Here, exercise at 7 a.m. Here, dinner at 7 p.m. And here, writing. From 8 to 9 p.m. protect these blocks like they're meetings with your boss. Because they are meetings with your future self. Daniel nodded slowly. The idea felt powerful. If he blocked his time, he wouldn't have to decide in the moment. The decision would already be made. Protecting the block. The first night Daniel sat down at 8 p.m. to write. At 8:10 his phone buzzed. A friend invited him to play an online game. His fingers almost typed sure. But then he remembered Sarah's words. Meetings with your future self. He looked at the clock. No, he whispered. This hour is already taken. He turned off his phone and wrote his first page of a children's story. His writing was not perfect, but it was real. When the hour ended, Daniel felt a deep satisfaction. For once, he had not betrayed his own plan. Saying no, time blocking also forced Daniel to say no more often. One evening, his co-workers invited him to stay late and drink. Normally, Daniel would have joined, but he looked at his calendar and saw his writing block. Sorry, I have plans tonight, he said. It felt strange to refuse, but also powerful. He was learning that every yes to others was also a no to his own goals. Discipline meant protecting his time like treasure. Lesson learned. After 2 weeks of time blocking, Daniel's life felt different. He was still the same person, but his days had more structure. He noticed something. When he controlled his time, he felt calmer. He no longer rushed through the evenings. He no longer told himself, I'll write later. Later was already decided. In his notebook, he wrote a new sentence. Time is not found. Time is made. Daniel closed the notebook with a smile. For the first time, he was not only building habits, He was also protecting the hours that could build his future. Daniel was getting better at managing his time. The wall calendar with red X's was full. His notebook had pages of notes and ideas. He even had 3 chapters of a children's story written. But something was wrong. Every evening, when the clock reached 8, Daniel sat down to write. Yet sometimes his eyes were heavy, his brain felt slow, and his body just wanted to lie down. Even with time blocking, he could not always use the time well. One night, he pushed his notebook away in frustration. I have the time, he thought, but I don't have the energy. The talk with Sarah. The next weekend, Daniel met Sarah again. They walked around the lake, and Daniel explained his problem. I do everything right, he said. I block my time, I keep my habits. But often when it's time to write, I feel too tired, like my brain battery is empty. Sarah smiled. Exactly. Discipline is not only about time. It's also about energy. Think of yourself like a phone. Even if you have hours of free time, you can't use them well if your battery is at 5%. Daniel laughed. That's exactly how I feel. Then it's time to manage your energy, Sarah said. The 4 batteries. Sarah explained that people have 4 main batteries. Physical energy, food, sleep, movement. Mental energy, focus, attention, clarity. Emotional energy, mood, stress, relationships. Spiritual energy, purpose, meaning, values. When one battery is empty, she said, discipline becomes 10 times harder. But if you keep your batteries charged, you don't need to force yourself so much. Daniel listened carefully. This was new to him. Starting with sleep, Daniel decided to begin with the most basic, sleep. He realized he often went to bed past midnight, scrolling on his phone. No wonder he was tired. So he set a rule. In bed by 11 p.m., no phone after 10:30. The first nights were hard. He wanted to check messages or watch videos. But he remembered his rule and put the phone across the room. Within a week, Daniel noticed a difference. He woke up less tired. His mornings felt lighter. By evening, he still had energy left for writing, food, and movement. The next step was food. Daniel often skipped breakfast or ate fast food for lunch. He never thought much about it, but now he realized junk food made him slow. So he started small, one healthy breakfast each day. Oats, fruit, and tea. Later, he added a habit of drinking more water. He also began moving more. Not long workouts, just a daily walk during his lunch break. Some days he stretched for 10 minutes at home. It was not much, but it refreshed his body and cleared his mind. Guarding mental energy. Daniel also noticed how much his phone drained his focus. Every time he scrolled social media, his brain felt scattered. So he made a new rule. Phone stays outside the room during writing time. At first he felt uncomfortable, almost anxious. But then he realized, without the phone, he entered deep focus faster. The pages of his story grew quicker. Emotional and spiritual energy. One evening, after a hard day at work, Daniel sat by the window. He felt stressed and heavy. Writing was impossible. Then he remembered Sarah's words about emotional and spiritual energy. He decided to call his grandmother, who always made him smile. After a short talk, his mood lifted. He wrote for half an hour with ease. Another day, when he asked himself, why am I writing this story? He felt a wave of energy. He wasn't writing just for fun. He wanted children to enjoy reading, to learn kindness and courage. This purpose gave him strength. Lesson learned. After several weeks, Daniel realized something important. Discipline was not about fighting exhaustion every day. It was about managing his energy like money. He wrote in his notebook, "Time is important, but energy makes time useful." Daniel closed the notebook and smiled. His life was becoming more balanced. He had more control, not only of his hours, but also of his strength. He felt ready for the next step, learning how to protect his focus from distractions. Daniel now had better sleep, more energy, and a clear time block for writing. But there was still one big enemy: distraction. Even when he sat at his desk with fresh energy, it was too easy for his mind to wander. He opened a new page, but then thought about checking email. He wrote 2 sentences, but then remembered something to search online. Sometimes, without even noticing, his hand reached for his phone. After half an hour, Daniel would look at the screen and see only 1 paragraph written. His frustration grew. Why is it so hard to focus? I have the time. I have the energy. Why can't I stay on the page? The experiment. Daniel decided to run a small experiment. One evening, he placed his phone in the kitchen drawer, turned off Wi-Fi on his laptop, and set a simple timer for 30 minutes. Just 30 minutes, he told himself. No internet, no phone, only writing. At first, his brain screamed for escape. He wanted to open the drawer, check messages, or browse something. But he forced himself to stay. After 10 minutes, something interesting happened. His mind became calmer. He entered a flow. Words started coming more easily. When the timer rang, he looked at the page. He had written more in 30 minutes than in the whole previous night. Daniel realized that distractions were not small interruptions. They were thieves stealing his best work. Sarah's advice. The next day, Daniel told Sarah about his experiment. "That's perfect," she said. "Focus is like sunlight. When it's spread everywhere, it's weak. But when you focus it like a magnifying glass, it can burn." She continued, "The key is to design your environment. Make distractions hard to reach and focus easy to start." Daniel thought about this. He decided to create a focus zone in his apartment. Building a focus zone. First, he cleared his desk. No random papers, no old coffee cups, no unnecessary objects. Only his notebook, his laptop, and a pen. Second, he made a rule: no phone in the room during writing time. The phone stayed in the drawer in the kitchen. Third, he used his calendar timer. He set blocks of 30 to 45 minutes for writing, with a short 5-minute break afterward. This new setup changed everything. The moment Daniel sat at the clean desk, his brain received a signal. Now it's time to focus. The battle inside. Still, distractions were not only outside. Many lived inside his own head. While writing, he often thought, "Is this story good enough? Maybe I should check other books. Maybe I should do research first." These thoughts felt urgent, but they were just another form of distraction. So Daniel created a trick. He kept a small distraction notebook next to him. Whenever a thought appeared, check email, search this, send message. He wrote it down quickly and returned to writing. Later, during break time, he looked at the list. Most of the items were not important at all, but by writing them down, he freed his mind to keep working. The reward of deep focus. After 2 weeks of practicing focus, Daniel noticed a big change. His writing sessions became shorter, but far more productive. One night, after finishing 2 solid pages, he leaned back and smiled. This is what discipline feels like, he thought. Not perfect, not easy, but powerful. He realized that deep focus was a reward in itself. It felt peaceful, almost like meditation. Lesson learned. Daniel opened his journal and wrote, "Distraction is the enemy of discipline. Focus is a muscle. Train it every day. As he closed a notebook, he understood something deeper. Discipline was not only about habits, time, or energy. It was also about protecting his attention, the most valuable resource of all. And he knew the hardest test was still coming. The days when motivation would completely disappear, when even the strongest systems would feel heavy. One rainy morning, Daniel woke up and felt completely empty. He had slept well, his calendar was ready, his desk was clean, but his heart was heavy. He did not want to stretch, read, or write. What's the point, he thought. I'm not a real writer. I'm wasting my time. The old Daniel would have stayed in bed. But the new Daniel had something different. A chain of habits, a wall of red X's, a notebook full of lessons. He remembered Sarah's words. On bad days, show up small. Do less, but don't do nothing. So Daniel sat at his desk. He told himself, just 10 minutes. If I can't write a page, I'll write one sentence. He opened his notebook and wrote, I don't feel like writing today. Then he added one more line, and then another. By the end of the 10 minutes, he had half a page. It wasn't his best work, but it was something, and something was infinitely better than nothing. The lesson of consistency. That evening, Daniel met Sarah again. He confessed, I had no motivation today. I almost gave up. Sarah smiled gently. Daniel, this is a secret. Discipline means you don't quit on bad days. Progress is not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. Even tiny steps count, especially on hard days. Daniel nodded slowly. He finally understood. Motivation was a wave. It came and went. But discipline was the boat that stayed steady, even when the waves were rough. Looking back, weeks later, Daniel sat by the window with his finished first draft of a children's story in his hands. It wasn't perfect. It would need editing. But it existed, and for years it had only lived as a dream in his head. He looked around his apartment. On the wall, the calendar was almost full of red X's. On the desk, his notebook was fat with pages of reflections. His routines were stronger, his energy steadier, his focus sharper. For the first time, Daniel felt proud, not because he had achieved everything, but because he had become someone different, a new identity. Daniel realized that he no longer said, I'm lazy, or I can't stay consistent. Those words belonged to the old version of him. Now he said to himself, I am a disciplined person. I keep promises to myself. This new identity changed how he acted. Discipline was no longer a battle. It was simply part of who he was. The farewell talk. One Sunday afternoon, Daniel and Sarah walked in the same park where they had talked months before. You've changed, Sarah said. Do you see it? Daniel laughed softly. Yes, I finally understand what you meant. Discipline is not about waiting for motivation. It's about building habits, protecting time, managing energy, and focusing attention. It's about showing up even when I don't feel like it. Sarah nodded. Exactly. And remember, the journey never ends. Discipline is not a destination. It's a way of living. Daniel looked at the sky. The clouds were moving and sunlight was breaking through. For the first time in years, he felt not just hopeful, but steady. Final reflection. That night, Daniel opened his journal one last time for the day. He wrote, Discipline is choosing today, again and again. Small habits create big change. Time is treasure. Energy is power. Focus is protection. Consistency is strength. And identity makes it last. He closed a notebook with a quiet smile. The journey was not perfect. The journey was not easy. But the journey had begun, and that was everything.